Today I'll be doing an in-depth critique of this piece by MrMeepoArt, who wanted some help with their hair drawing. I'll walk you through the steps I took to go from this to this. I'll be giving pointers on shape design, shading, rendering, and adding highlights. Enjoy! This is a drawing from MrMeepoArt. They said that they were practicing drawing hair with this one, and they feel like it looks a little bit flat. Let's see what we can do to improve it a little bit and hopefully make the hair feel more realistic and alive. I think you did a good job. The hair looks really appealing, and I think the face especially is well done. I really like this nose shape. It looks really unique, and she's really cute. But I think it can be improved on a little bit, so let's hop to it. Hair is mostly shape design. The trick about designing hair shapes is you want to create as much variation as you can so that the shapes look organic. So what kind of things can you vary when you're thinking about hair? A couple things. One easy one is length, for instance. Like this, hair like this, all the same length. Boo, hiss, boring, right? Changing up the length a little bit will look better, right? This is same length. These ones are different lengths, so that's better, okay? You can change up the width. So like this is still bad, but what if we do, let me make it a bit bigger. Different widths. These widths are all the same. Well, I won't put the X here. These widths are a little bit different. And maybe we can change up the angle as well. There's also the angle, so let me do that. There's so many things you can change. So if you have a strand like this, having an exactly equivalent strand like that on next to it won't look good. What you want to do is have a strand like that, and then change the angle, thickness, and width, and it'll look a lot more natural. Big, medium, small, except for everything. It's not just size. For hair, it's like length, thickness, angle. So many things you could, so mostly these things, right? Because we're not drawing every individual strand of hair, we're simplifying them into chunks. Also, one more thing you might want to think about, you don't only want to vary up the width of the hair between different strands. If you look at the width of this strand of hair, it's kind of the same the whole way down the strand, which is why it looks kind of not that exciting. So doing something like this, where you kind of vary up the width of the hair along the strand, will look a lot more dynamic. You see what I mean here? You see what I'm doing? So this is like thin over here, and this is thick over here, and that looks a lot more exciting. Does it apply on both male and female hairstyles? Absolutely, hair is hair, right? So this part is where the whole ribbon thing comes in, because this has no form, right? Which is why if you think about it as a ribbon, then then the thinness and thickness naturally occurs, right? Because if you bend a ribbon like this, you will naturally have these points that are thicker and thinner. So keep the ribbon in mind when you're designing your hair shapes. One more thing before we go. So this is something I want to point out that MrMeepo did well here. Let's say you keep all these in mind and you draw something like this. Okay, we change up the length, we change up the thickness, the angle, all of these things. Wait, this still doesn't look that good, right? And the reason being, another thing you can think about that you can vary up is where these strands end. These points over here, they also form a straight line here, and unless it's deliberate, this usually doesn't look good. That's something else you want to vary up. Just more things you can change about hair. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get to seeing what we can do to maybe improve on your hair shapes a little bit. So I think you did a good job for this hair over here. I honestly wouldn't change a whole lot. I can see you did the sort of like card captor Sakura-ish, like in classic old school anime kind of bangs over here. And I think it's a good idea, but here I think you want to be careful to give the hair a little bit of thickness, okay? Because if you look at it, yes, you want to think of them as ribbons, but not literally, right? So give them a little bit of thickness and the hair will look more natural. Yeah, the air vents, the classic anime air vents. When it comes to shape design, everything I'll be saying here will be based on my own personal tastes and preferences. It's not necessarily strictly better, so take and use what you find useful from this critique and ignore the stuff you don't like, okay? So keeping these in mind, I'm just going to start refining the shape of the hair a bit. But I think the bangs are good, I wouldn't touch those. But this section I think could use a little bit of work. Okay, this is good. I like this. I would maybe change this a little bit. Change this strand here. I don't like it much. Because it looks too much like that one, like a mirror image. And remember, variation is key. So I'll change it to something like that. And that looks good to me. This little strand here is fine. There's a little bit of a problem here where you see how your hair here is kind of defined into 3 equally shaped segments. Again, you want to kind of avoid segments that are similarly sized. Same with this. So I'm going to change them up just a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of move them to the edge like this. And maybe put one a little closer like that. So let me see if I can divide these out a little bit so they're not so even anymore. I'll make this a little bit narrower, have a longer section over here, okay? And there you go. We'll address the rendering in a second, okay? First, basic shapes. I always start with the basic shapes. So there's nothing wrong with having a thing coming out here, but remember what I said about ribbons? Right now, this little chunk here doesn't really give, looks more like a kind of hook. This is what I see when I see this shape. Something like this, right? By the way, drawing kind of contour lines like this can be a good way to help you understand the form of what you're drawing. So that's the impression I get from this little hooky thing here. So let's try to flatten it out and make it look more like a ribbon. Just something like this will probably do. Okay, this part is fine, but I feel like the bottom part over here does raise a couple of questions for me. Like, what's actually happening here? Why is there these strands kind of coming out like this? Like, where is the direction of the hair coming from? Where is the origin? I think you've done a good job for the rest of the hair. Like, clearly there's a middle parting here and the hair comes out in this direction. Okay, it's pretty clear, that's good. For this section, I'm a little bit less clear, right? I guess it's maybe short hair? So I'll kind of keep it relatively flat. If it were short hair, it'd be pointing up, perhaps. So I'll do something like this. If it was like buzzed, for instance. So I'm looking at the shape of these 3 segments here. Again, they seem pretty similar in width. So I'm gonna, again, change it up a bit. Here, now they are 3 kind of differently shaped and differently sized little blobs. Okay, you mentioned you had an issue with the hair feeling flat on the bottom, and the reason is because it's not really following the curvature of the body, okay? Because right now the hair is going straight down here, whereas if you take a look at the neck and shoulder here, it's kind of curving this way, right? So you want to make your hair follow that to look like it's resting on the shoulders, right? So I'm gonna do that. So instead of having the hair go here, just bring it forward a bit. Give it some room. Again, let's make sure to kind of keep it like a ribbon shape, so I'm gonna do that. So one thing that is really effective for increasing the appeal of your hair is to add like very thin flyaway strands that come out like that. That just kind of do their own thing. And even if you have very simple shapes, adding a couple of flyaway strands here and there can go a very long way. I'll show you what I mean when I do the rendering afterwards. Well, this doesn't look great to me. It's a little bit curving up a bit too much. Keep it a bit simpler. And the same for this one. Make sure it follows the curvature of the shoulders. All right. That's the general idea. So let's talk about the rendering and highlights, okay? So you have like a stylized highlight, and I'm going to do something kind of similar, but I fear that the way you've done the highlights doesn't really strongly give me the impression of hair. Before we continue, let's take a look at some hair in reality, right? I mean, we're doing stylized hair, but looking at reality is always helpful. I can understand what you're going for here, but I feel like where you've placed the highlights more of a problem of placements. The main highlights are quite bright, but any secondary highlights tend to be quite subtle. And what you've done here, if you made very bright highlights here, here, and here, they're all equally bright when they I don't think they should be. Before we do anything, I feel like we should determine a light direction. Right now, it doesn't feel like there's a very strong light direction. I guess it's dark on the bottom and slightly lighter on the top, but I feel like it'll give a stronger hair impression if we actually render it out based on where stuff is. Okay, and give me a moment, I'll just be cleaning these up. I'll leave the highlights where they are for the moment though. Yeah, stylized hair depends on what you're trying to go for, so I don't want to change the style up too much, but I'll still change the shapes based on my own preferences. I like adding a few more separations here where the hair ends. A little complexity down here, I think, tends to look really pretty, so I'm gonna do that. Okay, I'm gonna remove these for now because I do think they're really eye-catching. Even when it comes to reality and mathematics, if it doesn't look good, then don't draw it. In the end, it's whether or not it looks good to you. If reality doesn't look good, change it. Make it better. You're allowed to do that. That's why we do art. So I've tried to keep my hair shapes similar to you, but you can change them if you like, but my general preference is to have them a little bit more flowy. But rounded hair shapes, there's nothing wrong with them. That's just my personal preference coming through. If the hair is short, I think I'll just kind of keep it like that. Then I'll draw in some of the lines back like this. Okay, I'm gonna remove this highlight for now. We'll bring it back in a sec, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a hard light layer here and kind of, so if we look at the original one here, right? I find that it's not clear where the light source is coming from, so I'm gonna set a light source. I'm gonna say the light mostly comes from the top and then kind of diagonally from the top, let's say like this, okay? Let's go something like that. So the light source is gonna be coming kind of from the frontal like that. That's what I'm gonna do. That's the light source. So to pay attention. So when they're heading facing down, you make it darker. On this side, you can add as much detail as you want, but for now I'll keep it fairly simple. See, this section is facing upward, so I'm not gonna make it, in fact I'll make it a little bit paler. There we go, something like that will work maybe. So because the light is coming from the top and the front, we'll add a bit of light over here, but not too much though. I want to keep the shadows, the values fairly grouped, I think. Yeah, it's a bit too bright, honestly. And then tone it down a bit. Stick with the shadows, they're more important. You used orange because it made the hair color pop because you put blue hues in it? Yeah, it looks nice. You did a good job with it. So what I'm doing right now, in case you're wondering, right? I'm thinking of the hair in terms of kind of discrete little chunks, right? Like there's a chunk over here, there's a chunk over here. So the shape is gonna look something like this, right? So if the light is coming from here, then these sections over here of the lumps that are facing kind of that way, they will be darker. That's what I'm thinking about, okay? While I'm doing the shading. It's not random. This is, you know, this is the importance of understanding 3D form. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm kind of trying to explain why and how I'm placing these shadows, right? It's not just vibes. Well, vibes has something to do with it because making appealing shadow shapes is something you have to learn as well. I'm just giving it a little bit more form, and we'll bring the highlights back in a sec. This is facing up. We're gonna give it a little bit of highlight. Okay, now we do the highlights. Okay, we're gonna grab the same color here. Okay. So what we see here, they're kind of like strandy shapes. So instead of doing the webby shape you did here, I'm gonna kind of stick to more, kind of try to bring out the actual shape of the highlights, of the hair, I mean. So I'll grab this color over here and paint some highlights in. Just following the direction of the hair strands. You can do some highlights here, but you probably don't want to overdo it because it's not only about realism when it comes to hair, it's about where you want to draw the eye. And you probably don't want to be drawing a lot of attention to these strands down here because they're not, you want the attention to be focused around the eyes and face area. So you add more contrast to the upper bits so it directs the viewer's eye towards the face, which is incredibly pretty. So good job with the face, by the way. It looks really nice. So many people came in here and were like, oh, I love your style, but it wasn't my style. It was MrMeepo style. And same thing. We're just going to... You can simplify the shapes if you want. I made them pretty messy. But I personally like slightly more subtle shapes when it comes to highlights. I don't like super bright highlights. Like for me, something like this would be sufficient. Oh, actually, I should do this. Okay, bend it down a little bit. Give it a bit more volume. Okay, I like that more. There you go. Here's another cool trick you can do. Sometimes adding a couple of like very light strands like this can be very, very pretty, so I'm gonna try. It's like just individual stray hairs just catching the light. So there you go. Let me see, anything else I want to do? Over here a little bit more. Maybe some dark hairs catching the light. Some darker hairs on this side too to kind of balance it out. There you go. So here is before, and here would be my suggestions for hair. I hope that was helpful. You came here to say that you saw the art in a thumbnail for the video called Can a Beginner Actually Improve in 30 Days? And the eyelashes are so well made. How did I give it that 3D look? Wait, you're here to tell me about the thumbnail? Well, thank you. The eyelashes, huh? It's all about form drawing and understanding the shape. I mean, yeah, it really is just form drawing, right? I just thought about it and went like, all right, if I draw eyelashes like this, okay, then technically the eyelashes come out around here, let's say, then they should come out like this. It's all form drawing and fundamentals, unfortunately, or not. That's it. No tricks, sorry.